Welcome to this self-guided archive ambulation along Ber Street in Norwich, taking us from the Church of St John Timberhill to the Church of St John de Sepulchre, connecting documents held at the Norfolk Record Office with buildings and people along this ancient Norwich street. The documents have been chosen to demonstrate the variety of materials and collections that you can come and discover for free at the Norfolk Record Office. We begin the walk at the Church of St John Timberhill at the junction of Timberhill, Golden Ball Street, All Saints Street and Ber Street. The dedication to St John the Baptist is shown by the statue above the door on the porch. St John the Baptist is usually shown clad in camel skin with wild hair carrying a cross and pointing towards a lamb, symbolic of Christ. Here the statue has the camel skin, wild hair, cross and pointing figure, but no lamb. This was the nearest church to the castle entrance and was once known as St John Castlegate. It was used as one of the burial places for prisoners from the jail. You may notice that this church does not have a tower. It collapsed in 1784. The small bell cot was added in the 19th century when the whole church underwent major restoration. Norfolk Record Office holds the parish registers for most of the parishes in Norfolk, including the 40 parishes in Norwich. You can see here a part of a page from the earliest parish register for St John Timberhill, showing burials at the end of August 1666, including those that died of the plague during the last outbreak in Norwich. Standing with the churchyard wall behind you, look across the pedestrianised All Saints Street towards John Lewis, formerly Bonds. Bonds of Norwich was started in February 1879 by Robert Bond when he took over Woodland's drapery shop at the end of Ber Street, gradually expanding and taking over other nearby properties. The buildings were destroyed during the Second World War during the Baedeker raids. In 1942, the Luftwaffe launched a series of destructive air raids against historic towns and cities in Britain. These attacks were termed the Baedeker raids after the famous German travel guides. Norwich was raided on 27th of April and again 2 nights later. Although Norwich had been blitzed before and had air raid provisions in place, these raids cost the lives of 222 people. A member of Bond's staff recalled on the morning after the raid being asked when the salvage sales would be held, when there was little of anything remaining. Bonds continued to trade by using disused buses and empty properties in Norwich. The new store was designed and completed in 1951. John Lewis bought the store in 1982, but it stayed as Bonds until 2001 when the store was rebranded as John Lewis Norwich. Cross the road at the pedestrian crossing to walk on the eastern left-hand side of Ber Street. Continue along to the corner of Ber Street and Thorn Lane. The car park on the corner of Ber Street and Thorn Lane occupies the site of the former St Michael at Thorn Church. In this early photograph we see this elegant church with its slender bell tower. In the early hours of 27th of June 1942, 20,000 incendiary devices fell on Norwich along with 33 high explosive bombs. The church was gutted by fire, and all that remains of this church is a beautiful Norman arch which was relocated in St Julian's Church, which is down the hill towards the river from here. The Norwich bomb map was created by the Civil Defence Air Raid Precautions section of Norwich City Engineers Department. The map came to form part of the National Bomb Census, a country-wide effort to record information relating to damage sustained during the Second World War bombing raids. The bomb map has 679 tags which indicate the location, date and size of each bomb that fell between 1940 and 1945. Evidence from pinholes in the map indicate that there were more recorded. The map does not record the incendiary devices. Continue along Ber Street and stand opposite Stevenson's school uniform shop. Across the road is roughly where Houghton Yard was, which is believed to be the location of the bakery of Robert Houghton. If you watch Who Do You Think You Are, Robert Houghton was the ancestor of Mary Berry. Using Norfolk Record Office documents, researchers discovered that he was supplying the workhouse with substandard bread, much to the disapproval of Mary. You can see an entry dated 6th of April 1841 from the minute book for the Norwich workhouse. Before you reach the pedestrian crossing, look across the road to see the Lock and Key Yard. Norwich is famous for its courts and yards. These could house up to 40 families with a single access onto the street. They often had a single pump for water and rudimentary toilet arrangements. In 1900 there were over 700 yards. Some yards were below the level of the main streets and were known as holes. Continue along Ber Street, cross Horns Lane, a little further along, beyond the flats on the left-hand side of Ber Street, you will see some flint ruins. This is our next stop. This is St Bartholomew's, a 14th century church that fell out of use in 1549, the year of Kett's rebellion. The church became a warehouse and was completely surrounded by buildings, rather like St Mary the Less is today. The church was largely destroyed during slum clearance of 1938. Here we can see a portion of the Index Monasticus, a map compiled by Richard Cowling Taylor in 1821, showing Norwich before the dissolution of the monasteries. The adage goes that Norwich had a church for every Sunday in the year and a pub for every day. This map shows us that there were far more churches and religious houses than we might suppose. Continue along Ber Street until you can find a safe place to stop opposite Jolly Butcher's Yard, which is next to the Flaming Galahs takeaway. The green plaque commemorates Antoinette Hannant, Antonetto Carrara, or Black Anna, who lived there from 1935 to 1976. She was born in Ber Street, Norwich, of Italian descent in 1905. She married Kenneth Jack Hannant, who became landlord of the Jolly Butchers in September 1935. We have a page from the 1939 register. This provides a snapshot of the population just after the start of the Second World War in a similar way as the census does. The register was used to organise ID cards, food rationing and conscription. We can see Kenneth and Antoinette recorded as public house and lodging keepers, the public house being the Jolly Butchers. There are 24 men listed as living on the premises. Interestingly, Anna's parents, Leonello and Elizabeth, and her brother lived next door at 123 Ber Street, Flaming Galahs. By April 1947, Kenneth had died. Anna then ran the pub until May 1976. Anna was well known for jazz singing. She had a deep, throaty singing voice, and during the Second World War became very interested in blues and jazz songs that she learnt from the visiting American servicemen. Ber Street has had a long association with butchery, with archaeological evidence of this dating from the 14th century. In the 19th century, the street was also known as Blood and Guts Street due to the large number of butchers on the street. This is presumably when the Jolly Butchers derived its name. With the 19th century came the arrival of the railway. Trowse Station had a large area of animal holding pens. The cattle were driven from Trowse up Brackendale along Ber Street to the cattle market, located where the Castle Quarter, formerly Castle Mall, now stands. Continue along Ber Street until the junction with Mariners Lane. If you look down Mariners Lane from this vantage point, you can appreciate that Ber Street runs along the top of a ridge. Berg is Anglo-Saxon for hill or mound. From here you can see how green the city is, and on the ridge opposite, in the distance, you can see Britannia Barracks, which became part of the prison in the 1970s. From the records of Norwich City Council, City Engineers Department, we can see the slum clearance proposed for this area in 1938. Many of the properties in the clearance areas were densely packed courtyards and back-to-back dwellings with communal privies and could only be approached along passageways leading off the streets. This process was accelerated by the air raids of the Second World War. Continue along to the mini roundabout at the corner of Ber Street, with Lily Terrace as a convenient place to stop to look across to the church. This is the Church of St John the Baptist and the Holy Sepulchre, commonly called St John de Sepulchre, and it sits just inside the city walls. The church is in the Norwich Historic Churches Trust portfolio and is being extensively conserved and renovated. The oldest surviving parish register for this church dates from 1632. These early parish registers contain the usual baptism, marriages and burials recorded within the pages, but can also include surprising additional information, in this case some recipes for remedies. Take a obulus, which is a halfpenny worth of madder, and put it into a quart of beer all night, and then drink it, and then keep in 2 or 3 hours. Very good to drive out corrupt humours. Take 2 pennyworth of Holland powder, which is senna. Put it in a little beer and drink it warm, good to purge. Take a quart of barley, boil it till it be open, then strain and boil in the water licorice and aniseed, so much as come to 2 pence worth of fennel roots and parsley roots, good for the cough. Ber Street was at one time called Little Italy due to the large proportion of Italians who had fled to this country in the 19th century during the Italian Wars of Independence. Here is Big Peter Chiesa, who was an ice cream seller during the summer months and a decorative plaster maker during the winter. He lived between St John de Sepulchre and the city walls. You can continue along Ber Street until you join the Ring Road, Brackendale. Here stood the Ber Street gates. This is the original 18th century drawing by John Kirkpatrick, which appears in his Streets and Lanes of Norwich. If you turn to look back towards the city, you can see a rendition of the gate in plasterwork on the Ber Street Gates pub. This sort of plasterwork is a peculiar advertising device on public houses in Norwich. Examples: Prince of Denmark and the Coachmaker's Arms. The city walls and gates were completed in 1343 by Robert Spink. The walls were about 20 feet high with battlements. If you look up to the top of the wall on the inside, you can see the battlements and walkway. The towers and walls were made of flint with brick. You can see here Walter Rye's map of 1725 shows the extent of the walls and gates around the city. Thank you for downloading this archive ambulation. The Norfolk Record Office can be found in the Archive Centre on the County Hall campus.